Happy Fabulous Friday, everyone. I am Hayley Hoffman, the founder and CEO of Dandi. And I thank you so much for taking the time to come and join us and to dive into some personal and professional development. So as you know, or you may not know, Dandi is a conscious beauty firm. And so we are focused on living more conscious lives. And that comes into the design of products, the design that we, and the choices that we make in our industry. So along with that, it just comes to actually understanding consciousness and finding those opportunities to bring a different level of awareness into our everyday lives. And so that's what Fabulous Fridays are for. And today I have my wonderful and dear friend, Dr. Renford Reese, who is going to share with us. Hi, Ren. How are you? Dr. Reese?
Hi. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. And today you're going to share with us five phrases to build cultural competency. But it's actually so much more than that. And so I'm really excited that you are going to be able to dive in and discuss your program, the Colorful Flags program, and share a little bit about yourself, but also what these five phrases truly mean. They are the precursor, I think, to really expanding and opening our minds and our hearts to be able to connect with a fellow human being. So I am going to give you the floor, and if you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be awesome.
Hi, my name is Renford Reese. I'm a professor at Cal Poly Pomona, professor of 25 years. I teach in the political science department, and I am the founder and director of the Prison Education Project, which is the biggest prison education program of its kind in the United States. But before I got into prison work, I founded and directed the Colorful Flags program. And I just want to take a second to just acknowledge Hayley Hoffman and Dandi for really digging in their heels to talk about consciousness, to talk about these difficult issues and concepts such as race and cultural learning. So before I get into those five phrases that Hayley alluded to, I want to give you some background about the Colorful Flags program. I was, back in 1994, chosen as a presidential fellow at USC. There were 24 of us chosen out of an eligible 12,000 graduate and professional students to participate in this rigorous leadership program. All of us had to come up with a community-based project. And my project stemmed out of my dissatisfaction with race relations in society, especially in Los Angeles. This was right after the Rodney King riots of 1992. And so my program revolved around a young lady named Latasha Harlins. Latasha Harlins was a 14-year-old girl. She walked into a Korean market on 42nd and Hoover Street in South Central Los Angeles. It was Saturday, 10 a.m. She walked into this store. She went to the back to the refrigerator. She opened the refrigerator. She got a bottle of orange juice. She put it in her backpack. The video showed that the young lady was clearly not trying to steal the orange juice. But the owner, Sun Jadu, had become accustomed to young African Americans coming in her store stealing. So when Latasha got to the counter, dude slapped her in the face. Latasha slapped her back. They got into a fight, got into a scuffle. The orange juice hit the ground. The girl got ready to walk out of the store. Sun Jadu picked up a gun and shot her in the back of the head. This is just as big as the Rodney King incident in Los Angeles. It just didn't get as much national or international coverage. So I asked myself after that incident, that tragic incident, could situations like this be diffused before they escalate into violence? And I said, what if? Not to say who was to blame, not to say who was a culprit. What if one had walked into that store that morning and said, "Annyeonghaseyo," hello, how are you doing in Korean? purchase something and say goodbye, have a nice day in Korean? Would the same scenario have taken place? We don't know. We say we value diversity, but we have all of these people that live beside us, work beside us, study beside us, and we can't even say hello in their language. So I remember dropping my car off at a Korean auto mechanic shop right over by USC on Vermont. I dropped my car off. I came back about 4 hours later, and I asked this elderly Korean gentleman, I said, "Did you service my muffler?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Did you service my transmission?" He said, "Yes." And I looked him in his eyes. I put my hand out and I said, "Kamsahamnida." Thank you very much in Korean. First, his mouth dropped open. Then his eyes started to water. Why? He had never heard an American, let alone an African American, attempt to speak his language. He didn't care about my syntax, my grammar, my mechanics. The only thing he cared about was me saying, "I care something about you. I see you." And I said, maybe there's something to this. What if I went into the schools, K through 12, starting with K through 6, and taught these basic statements of common courtesy and social etiquette? 5 statements of common courtesy and social etiquette in the 5 most spoken languages in a school district. Hello, how are you doing? What is your name? Thank you, you're welcome. Please, excuse me. Goodbye, have a nice day. Would it, 1, reduce ethnic mistrust? 2, would it stimulate cultural curiosity? 3, would it empower the ESL students? So we put this program in the schools, 2 school districts, LA Unified, Montebello Unified, 2,600 students, and they learn these basic phrases along with cultural facts. And it, 1, did reduce ethnic mistrust. It did stimulate cultural curiosity. It did empower the ESL students. And so over a 5-year period, this program has serviced 17 school districts in the Southern California, along with the Los Angeles Police Department, the Hospital of the Good Samaritan. It was adopted as a strategy for the Los Angeles County Human Relations Commission. And so the program stayed dormant for about two decades. And I started writing books and I started doing work inside of the prisons. And the George Floyd tragedy, with all of the protests, with all of the demonstrations, really compelled me to revive this program. Right? What is at the heart of the Colorful Flags philosophical model? The idea is, how do we penetrate what I conceptualize as the bubble of mistrust? You have 2 people sitting at a bus stop. They've been sitting there for an entire year. They've never spoken. Let's say one gentleman is African American. Let's say the other gentleman is Chinese. And every day they get up, sit down, get up, sit down at the same bus stop. And they never exchange words. What the Colorful Flags program says is, let's use something. Let's learn something about this person's culture, his background. And one day, I get enough nerve. I've gone and learned. I've learned that this person has been here for 14 months. And I turn to him. I'm African American. He's Chinese. And I say, "Ni hao ma," and hello, how are you doing? Person says he's doing well. And then I say, "Ni cha shama mingzi." Ni cha shama mingzi. Hello, what is your name? The person tell me their name. And then I ask them where they're from. Ni sa chang na le la da. He says, "Wo sa chang Beijing la da." I ask him where he's from. He tells me he's from Beijing. And irrespective of whether we're speaking in broken Chinese or broken English, the fact is we're penetrating this bubble of mistrust. And I think one of the fundamental things that is wrong in our society is that we have this bubble of mistrust that only calcifies. It only gets harder because we're not penetrating this bubble of mistrust. And it is a Colorful Flags program. As basic as it sounds, we use these basic phrases. Hello, how are you doing? We use these cultural facts, basic cultural facts, in 26 different languages to go out, whether it's Los Angeles, whether it's New York, whether it's San Francisco, to penetrate that bubble of mistrust. And so in corporate America, that's why I'm so grateful that my friend Hayley Hoffman has me on here, because people are groping for ways to penetrate that bubble of mistrust, to deal with the issues of race, to deal with the issues of social justice. Something as simple as saying hello in a person's language. Something as simple as saying thank you in a person's language. Something as simple as going to a restaurant, a Japanese restaurant, and just speaking just basic Japanese. Because what happens is, if I come to you and you're Russian and I say to you, Здравствуйте, как дела, как вас зовут? Hello, how are you doing? What is your name? In Russian, you're going to be empowered by that. You're going to be inspired by that. You're going to be excited, elated. And what is that going to make me do? It's going to make me excited. It's going to make me inspired to go beyond these 5 basic statements of common courtesy and social etiquette, to learn a 6th statement, a 7th statement. So this is what we call self-perpetuating learning. I go out, I use it, I get empowered, I empower that person, and I'm inspired to learn more. And so that's how someone like myself, who grew up in a place called Blacksville, Georgia, I went to the West Side Training School for the Colored, segregated by the railroad tracks. But it's just this curiosity, this cultural curiosity. It's just me going out and just being curious about the other person, being curious about their accent, being curious about that background, that really inspired me to travel to over 100 countries. And what I've learned traveling to 104 countries, speaking the languages of wherever I am, whether I'm in Egypt speaking Arabic, whether I'm in China, Hong Kong as a Fulbright fellow, teaching at the University of Hong Kong. It's nothing that tells that person that you see them, that you value their culture more than language. It's just that powerful. And it's traveling around the world, I've found that there is beauty, brilliance, and creativity all around the world. All we have to do is we got to see it. We can't be invisible to it, and we often stereotype people. And that's what you see now. You see people being stereotyped. You see people being racially profiled. I think we have to take that extra step in the analytical process to start to deconstruct where these stereotypes come from, right? Why is our society the way it is right now? Why is it so decadent? Why is it so toxic, so cancerous? Right? And I fundamentally believe, Hayley, that it starts with something as small, as simple as this: language, cultural curiosity, right? Because that leads to dialogue. And that dialogue leads to respect. And that respect leads to healing, right? When we go into the prisons, I take my volunteers. We have volunteers from about 20 different universities, 300 volunteers that go into 10 prisons throughout the state of California. And all of these volunteers have to have an orientation, a mandated orientation by the CDCR. That's the California prison system. And so they speak. And after they speak, I speak as the director of this program, the Prison Education Project. And I tell my volunteers, Hayley, that when you go inside of the prisons, you don't have PowerPoint. You don't have access to the internet. You don't have fancy projectors and projector screens. fancy slides. But what you have access to are your words. And if words have been used to damage, words can be used to uplift, to inspire, to empower. I believe in you. You can do this. I have your back. I'm proud of you. Whether you say it in English, Spanish, Russian, Farsi, they're words, and words are powerful. We think we have to go out and get $1 million grant to make change in our communities. The most powerful thing about words is that they're free. Whether I say it in English or whether I say it in Swahili, thank you. I'm proud of you. Right? And so that's the basis of what we have. The common denominator in Colorful Flags and the Prison Education Project is this South African concept of Umbutu. I never forget, I was in a place called Gugulethu, Langa Crossroads in Cape Town, South Africa. People with no running water, and we complain. People with no electricity, and we complain. People living off of $1 a day, and we complain. And I remember turning to the tour guide, who was a member of the Xhosa tribe. And I said, with so much bleakness, destitution, poverty, how do you keep your head up? How do the kids play soccer in the fields? And the guy looked at me and he said, Umbutu. And I said, Umbutu. He said, yes, Umbutu. I said, tell me about Umbutu. He said, Umbutu means when my neighbor is hungry, I feed him. It means when I'm hungry, he feeds me. Umbutu is brotherhood, is sisterhood, is community. And I've learned over time that whether you believe in God, Allah, Buddha, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, Mother Nature, Yahweh, when it's all said and done, somebody's going to hold us accountable for what we did down here. The way we treated people, not just our own people, but the way we treated everyone. We're not going to be judged by what type of cars we drove, what type of house we had in the suburbs, how many degrees we have. We're going to be judged by how we loved, how we respected other people. We have to understand that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's that spirit of Umbutu, that we're separate as the five fingers, but we're one as the hand. It's humanity. That's what binds us together. We're separate as the five fingers, but one as the hand. That's humanity. There was a story about this sociology professor. He was in Africa, and he was doing some type of sociological experiment. And so he had a group of 8-year-olds, and he wanted them to race down about 40 yards to this tree. And at this tree, he had put a lot of candy down at the root of the tree. And he told these young Africans, he said, the first one of you down to that tree gets to enjoy all of that candy by yourself. So he said, on your mark, get set, go. And to his amazement and utter shock, those 8-year-olds locked arms and they walked down to that tree together. And they sat down and they enjoyed all of the candy together. That's Umbutu, right? That's something that we might not be quite familiar with in the United States at this time, at this moment, but that's something that we should embrace. That's something that we should instill in our children, our nieces, nephews, our family members, our friends, this concept that I am because we are Umbutu. Okay, Hayley, I want to just pause here and just ask if you have any questions for me. Anyone in the audience, if you have questions for me, feel free to ask me anything about issues du jour or about the Colorful Flags program.
Yeah, you've certainly given us a lot to think about. And as always, you're very inspiring to connect with and hear your stories and your experiences. It's quite amazing. So thank you again for sharing. Maybe, we were going to talk about the Colorful Flag program. This is it. You went over some of the core things about it. So for everybody watching or listening to this, if you just want to check out the Colorful Flags program online, that would be great. But I do have some thoughts that, let me stop sharing the screen. There we go. That really stood out to me as you were talking, that I think is, even though we're talking about race and cultures, there's a lot of different cultures, right? Not just when you talk about ethnic and geographical cultures, but I think about, for my industry, we have the culture of brands and companies have their own cultures, industries have their own cultures. And so when we talked about the bubble of mistrust, I see that come up within our field as well. And I know it's a stretch. I'm not trying to take away anything from what you shared, but I think for the community, for the beauty community, I think there are some things to recognize here, that we do have bubbles of mistrust. They are very prevalent in our lives in a lot of different ways. And those core things, those core philosophies of common courtesy and I see you, those are things that really transcend any kind of mistrust. And that's one of the things that I'm really hoping, as we build a more conscious community within the beauty industry, that we would be an industry that really works to show up in that way, where we have common courtesy for the planet and the resources that we're taking and the communities that are supporting the availability and the labor to supply those ingredients or those materials, and the common courtesy for the people that are purchasing our products and using them, that we understand the safety concerns. Maybe somebody has cancer, they have an allergy, and being able to provide services and products that show up in a tangible way that say, I see you. I think it can be broken down very simply, even by instilling these 5 phrases that do build cultural competency. It gives us that actionable tool to step out of where we are and our bubble of mistrust, whatever that looks like from an industry standpoint. But if we can implement that in our everyday lives to our neighbor, maybe that'll hop on over to our professional life too. So I encourage everybody who's watching to learn more about the Colorful Flags program, to be inspired to learn a few more phrases. And I mean, Ren, you know this, but there's people probably watching. I'm a Korean adoptee, so I don't speak Korean, and you know a lot more Korean than I do. And so it's inspired me to try to learn a few more Korean words, or a few Korean words. But I just really appreciate your time and everything that you had to share. Is there anything else? Any other thoughts you have?
Yeah, if I can say this, Hayley, when you think about colorful flags, you can go to colorfulflags.org, and people see it as a language program, but it's more of a human relations program, because we're only using language as a proactive tool to penetrate the bubble of mistrust.
Yeah.
And so it's the philosophy, it's the conceptual framework around 2 people sitting next to each other. So let's use whatever we have in our arsenal Maybe it's a question about your shoes. Maybe it's a comment about your shirt or your necklace. But the idea is the same. Let's use something in our arsenal, whether it's saying something in this person's language or just reaching out to them. We need tools, we need strategies, we need some way to penetrate this bubble of mistrust so we can create dialogue. And I think that's the only way we heal.
Mm-hmm.
We can't heal if we can't see each other. We can't heal if we can't see that person's pain, their despair. We can't heal if we can't see their hope, right? And so it's about the human relations phenomenon of making that person visible and validating that person as an important entity in our society. So thank you so much for giving me this platform to talk about colorful flags and the concept of Umbutu.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for your work, Dr. Reese. Really appreciate it. You're making the world a better place, and you made it a very dandy day here on this fabulous Friday.